Weather's up and down as Melbourne always is.
We're live recording on YouTube and stuff now, mate. But
Okay, cool.
well, there we are. We are live on the screen. We'll just let everyone know that we are live, and we'll get stuck into it. I could drop an at everyone in the comments there and upset everyone.
Everybody loves a good at everyone comment, don't they?
Yeah. Right, mate. First of all, look, thank you very much for getting up, sending me your time to talk to the hub.
Yeah, my pleasure. Not a problem at all.
Just for anyone who knows, we've been sort of pumping this up for about a week or so. But Laine runs the Hobby Australia, and we'll drop your link to your Facebook page and stuff in the comments of this when we're done, Laine. But
Yep.
I've used Laine services now, guys, for a couple of years. Laine acts as, what do you call it, like an intermediary, mate?
Yeah, we basically a PSA authorised dealer is the term they like to use, but also when it comes to other grading companies, we generally act as you call us a middleman or you know a group submitter. They're the typical terms I see thrown around for it.
Yep. Yeah, so Laine sends to PSA, BGS, SGC, and
Yep. That's it. They're the ones. Yep.
They're the ones. And I've used Laine service, guys, for a couple of years, and it is A1. You fill your forms out, you send the cards to Laine. Laine has a website there that will keep you updated with where your cards are in the queue, and he updates that fairly frequently. Give you an idea where it is in the grading process and ETAs and when they come back. When your cards come back, he just sends you an email with how much it costs, and you pay the money and they get sent back to you.
Yeah, try and keep it as easy and simple as possible for most people. It's one of the things we often hear with grading, and we see it too. Sometimes it's a bit frustrating. It's not the simplest thing to do when you're, especially somewhere like Australia, and you're a bit further away from all of the other grading companies, which are all in the US based. So it's sometimes it's not just the paperwork that's a pain. It can be also shipping. I had a guy just call us the other day asking me how to ship his cards, and I said, look, it's not really what we do. That's something you have to deal with Australia Post. But it's just getting cards to the US safely, and insurance and ins and outs of all of that sort of thing that a lot of people don't necessarily either have the time to do it or just don't want to take the risk of doing it. And we try and help them, take the risk out of it, or at least take the worry out of it, because we have our own dedicated insurance policies with insurance companies for shipping, and we've done the paperwork a million times, and we know how to package things to get there safely. We know the ins and outs of customs and all that sort of stuff. So it's taking a few years and some heartache to get to the point, but that's sort of why I find a lot of people come to us, is because we do try and make it as simple and easy for them as they can. They literally fill out a form, send us the cards, and at the end of it, they get a bill and their cards back. And that's pretty much as simple as we try and keep it for them.
Yeah, excellent. So, mate, I've got a few questions I want to ask, and anyone who is watching, guys, feel free to jump in the comments at any stage and ask some questions. So, I guess my first one is, mate, is that we've got a lot of grading companies to choose from these days. Yep. So you've got the four big ones there from the States. When you look at a card, or how do you decide who you're going to send to? I tell my guys, if it's for your PC, just go to the one you like the most. And for me, that happens to be BGS. I like the BGS.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, look, that's true. It's it's definitely a few ins and outs of it, and it takes a bit of experience. And as you said, personal preference sometimes comes into play as well. I first started doing mostly BGS because nobody in Australia was doing PSA when I first started doing grading. It was literally BGS only, and that was fine at the time. Worked quite well. We only had a small group of people sending stuff, so we didn't really have that ability to choose different companies. And now I guess we're lucky in that we can give people some options. And I look at it a couple of different ways. So obviously, running a business is a key component of that. Is if I'm grading a card for the business, I want maximum sort of potential return on investment. So I'm going to be looking at what's going to give me that. And most of the time, PSA 10 is where I'm going to try and aim. Is my first aim is to try and get a PSA 10, but not every card's a PSA 10. A lot of the ones out of the pack these days are not even close to a PSA 10. So you've got to look at it, objectively and sort of decide what you think you can actually get out of it. And so for me, I'll start with PSA. And if I'm looking at a card and I think it's absolutely immaculate, then I'll actually revert back to BGS, because I'll look at it and go, well, if I can't find anything wrong with it, I'll actually go and, consider, do I send it to BGS and try and get a black label? Because black label and BGS 10 are the highest grades, obviously, that you can get for value-wise. They surpass PSA 10 every day of the week. It's only when you start then looking at the chances of getting that, so slim. I think in my time, I've got 2 BGS 10s ever, and I've sent thousands and thousands of cards. So it comes to the type of card and all that sort of stuff. TCG cards, surprisingly, have a higher chance of getting BGS 10s than any.
No, yeah.
Tommy manufactured better. Yeah.
Submitted a lot of TCG cards through the shop, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've got like 10 black labels." I said, "Bullshit, do you?" And yeah, show me. I think it was One Piece. I think
One Piece does really well. Yeah, One Piece. The other one that does really well is Dragon Ball Z, but it's all relative, right? So the problem is with that is if you don't get a BGS 10 or a BGS 10 black label in those products, then they're worth nothing. They're almost worth raw. So a 9.5 in those products doesn't hold any value because so many of them get 10s or black labels. So it's kind of a sliding scale of, what's the overall population on cards versus their value. So to give a couple of examples, I've got some cards here. Like when I'm looking at cards to choose for grading companies, I'll see if I can get this one on camera. This one here is one that we picked up from a customer, actually. He sent it off himself. It's a really nice one. It's a dual patch, or at least, it's got the LeBron patch in there, and the Jordan is a number patch. But that's a thicker card. So you can't really see it very well in there. But you can see they're like 130-point cards. So they're thicker. Generally, as soon as I get a 130-point card, I immediately think I'm going to send that to BGS. Reason being is because of the subgrades with BGS, you might get a 9 on edges, but you can still get a 9.5 overall because you might get 9.5s or 10s for the other subgrades. And conversely, you can get bumped up to a 9 from an 8.5 because you've got better subgrades. Whereas with PSA, it's kind of more of a cumulative loss. So with PSA, I tend to look at a card. So, for example, we've got this another one with Jordan involved here. This is I picked this one up recently, though, so it's not one I've graded myself. But it's a PSA 8, so it's a Rockstars Refractor MJ, right? These cards are notoriously hard to grade because they're a die cut, for starters. They're made in the 90s, so anything made in the 90s is automatically, in my eyes, about an 8 before you even start looking at it.
Fair enough.
This is the way they manufactured the cards. Stuff like this, the biggest issue with this one, you'll never see it on camera, but basically the top of this across here, there's multiple spots where there's actually like the edges have been kind of rolled or crimped just because of the die cut shape. So things like die cuts and that, they don't lend themselves much to grading quite often because too many edges mean too many chances of getting dings and things. But realistically, I've seen 10s come back from die cuts as well. So every now and again you find one. But something like that, like a Jordan, Rockstars Refractor or any of the 90s refractors, those typically do pretty well when you're talking about grading in terms of getting, if you get an 8 or a 9 on them, they hold value. So you've always got to look at the era of the card as well. Older stuff, lower grades, if it's still desirable, people still want it. So you can choose your grading company then. PSA is obviously the one that's most popular these days. Everybody chases PSA 10s, but there's still a lot of people who like BGS, but ultimately, we see more and more cards come through PSA than we do BGS every day of the week. Other things, I guess, to keep in mind is when you're looking at certain cards for grading. So, for example, this is a Topps Chrome UEFA Champions competitions. This one was from this year. It's a gold refractor. The card's actually in exceptionally good condition. So overall, it's actually a really good candidate for a 10. The thing that puts it off, and it's just hard to show here because I've got to put it on an angle to avoid the glare, is the actual border of the card on this side here is actually slightly smaller than this side.
Yeah, left-hand side looks a bit thicker on.
Yeah. I'll put it side by side. We've got another one here that we actually graded at the same time, which I'm trying to get my camera right, which came back a 10. And that one actually, you can see a bit more clearly that the border is actually...
Yeah, it looks a bit more even Stevens.
Yeah, so things like that are just key things to keep in mind when you're looking at different cards for grading. It sort of takes a bit of experience to understand some of these things and actually be able to look past what your own perception quite often is. It's going to be a 10 because I want it to be a 10, and I do it all the time too. I desperately want a card to be a 10 because I know that means either, if it's going into my collection, great. If it's going into the business, then also means it's more likely to get a better return on investment. But not every card's a 10, so you got to be a little bit subjective and sort of have a bit of a, chance at say.
Understood. Right. So it's my thoughts on this, and I think it's generally accepted, is that the black label is the gold standard. That is the best one that you want to get. If you could get a BGS 10 black label, that sets it aside from everything else. Your next step down would be a BGS 10, was where you'd want to aim for. Then a PSA 10.
There is actually another one that you don't see very often, and I don't actually have any of them. I've never had one myself. It's from this company here, SGC. They actually do a gold label 10.
Right.
So they do their own pristine 10, I think it's called. I'll have to check that up. I personally have never seen one come through our service. We haven't sent a huge amount of cards to SGC, but an SGC gold label, unless they've decided to change their grading standard, which I doubt they have, is probably, I would say, somewhere between maybe a BGS 10 and even a black label, because SGC are quite hard graders. They are not the sort of company that you'd send stuff to and expect them to be lenient on your grades. They, in my experience, they're as stringent, if not more, than PSA. And Beckett fluctuates wildly, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know they had a gold label one, so that's good to know. So obviously that's like a black label. So, but then basically as we come down, we then go to a BGS 9.5 and then probably a PSA 9. And we start getting SGC 9.5s and stuff around that area too, don't we?
Yeah, it's about right.
Price-wise, I mean.
Yeah, so SGC 9.5s do fluctuate a little bit, but they might sometimes be a bit above a 9 PSA or about the same. It just depends on the card and the population report and all those sorts of other things that come into play. But yeah, ultimately I'd say around the same as a 9 PSA. BGS 9, a bit lower than both of them.
Yep. Roger. So we haven't got any serious questions so far, mate. All I've got is a whole heap of questions about have I lost weight. I don't know if you can see the comments there. Hello, Mr. Celebrity from John Williams. Apparently I'm an oral B dentist. Thanks for that, John Carter. The next question I was going to ask, mate, few Australian grading companies coming up. I know we've actually got one local to us in Newcastle called Provenance. I know there's ICG up there in Queensland, and there's a lot of guys that are pretty interested in the ICG stuff.
Right.
Where do you sit with grading companies in Australia? What I've basically told my guys is that if you like that slab, do it. There's no harm in getting that in there. But at this point, I don't know if they add too much value to a card.
There is definitely a market for them. So people don't always necessarily want to send their cars to America. It takes extra time. It's there is always that inherent risk, regardless of what we might do or others might do when they send their own cards. That's what it is, right? So therefore, you having domestic services for grading, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's been a card grading Australia's been around for decades, right? They're not a new service. They've been around for a long time, and to me, they're still probably the most reputable Australian card grading company, just because they've got provenance. Now, that's the key thing when it comes to grading for me, is understanding the company and who is actually grading and what experience they have and what they know. Someone like Card Grading Australia has been around a while. They've seen a few things. They've probably got the experience to actually identify some things, some of the fakes and all those sorts of things. So that's good. The things I always run into is with the newer companies that come up, how do they know that they're grading a card that's real, hasn't been altered, hasn't been, had some issues with it, some funky things done to it. So that's the sort of thing that takes time. And you look at a company like PSA, BGS, there's not one person in that company that knows everything. They have a variety of people that have expertise in different areas. So there might be someone who's, TCG is their expertise, another guy who does vintage baseball, and somebody else who's an expertise in, modern basketball. So they've got, if a high-end card comes through with a potential high value, it always goes to a senior grader who's got the right experience in that field, and not just a junior grader who's been doing it for 20 minutes a year, whatever. It takes years. So yeah, it's one of these things. that's my only concern when it comes to Australian graders. If you're looking for, increasing value and all that sort of stuff, then that's the reason why it doesn't often end up leading to a huge jump in prices for people, purely because they just don't necessarily have that certainty behind the grading for the card. But at the same time, if you want to protect your cards, you want them in a nice slab, you like the look of the slabs, you want to get them back quicker, potentially for a cheaper price. So, you might pay you $20, $30 and have them back within 2 weeks, then fantastic. They're a really valuable option for that in terms of getting your card into a nice slab and protected.
Nice and protected, yeah.
On it.
So I got a question in there, guys. Drop the questions in the comments here, because I'm not going to stop Laine talking to ask your question. Just drop them in. So Stavros asked one here, mate.
Yeah.
Does your company service memorabilia? And has there been any discussion about a PSA location in Australia?
I'll say no to the first one. We have looked at it. It's just because of the size of memorabilia, it's just too bulky to get shipped to and from the US, and actually make it viable for people. It ends up costing, a couple of $100 per signature, and it's just not. It doesn't seem to make any sense for most people.
Okay.
We've done it once or twice, and it was more just for a couple of random things that I had and a customer was willing to pay a stupid amount of money for. So,
yep.
And secondly, look, PSA are always looking at their options. They have an office in Japan now. I think feasibly, though, when you look at the number of cards that collectively Australia sends to PSA per week, I just don't think the volume's there necessarily. That being said, it's one of those things. If it was here, would the volume increase because people could send it locally? So, it's one of those things. I think they will continue to look at expansion opportunities as it, time goes on. And once they settle themselves into their, they've opened up and gone from just being California based to having California, New Jersey to California, New Jersey, Japan in the last 2.5 years, I think it is. So give them a bit of time and they might decide where next.
Fair enough. Guys, the questions are sort of coming and appearing and disappearing. So I am missing some. We're not missing these.
I've got them on my screen here. So it's also, and how quick can they grade 25 numbered T-laws with PSA?
No, Chad, listen, just ignore most of what Chad Edwards said.
Hey, that's right. If he wants to pay, he can get them back in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, Chad. He did ask another one about cracking and resubbing. Is that something that you guys do? If you send something and totally mess it up and it comes back with a terrible grade on it, do you crack and resubmit?
You can, yeah. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. And even the PSA president, who was on a discussion the other day with someone on a podcast or whatever on a YouTube, basically said that it's possible that if you did that, you're going to get a different grade because different graders look at it. And I was quite interested to hear that from him himself. I've done it before as a test. I've sent it to the same card to 3 different companies. So I've sent it to BGS, SGC, and PSA. They all came back with the exact same grade. So, it was a Prism card. It had a small surface defect. I wanted to see how the others treated the same issue. And it came back the same across all 3 companies. And I was quite surprised about that when it happened. I was like, I thought at least there'd be some variation. I've resubmitted cards before. In the years gone by, I've submitted, say, an NT RPA to Beckett 3 times. Every time it came back with the same final grade, but the subgrades changed.
Yeah, right.
So it was just, it seems that, in my experience, the times I've seen it happen, and this is just me, I've seen other people say had an 8, cracked it, wiped a fingerprint off it and got a 10. Well, sure, that's maybe it got you to the 9, and then on the day the guy decided it was a 10 for whatever reason. It's just one of those things that, it is a subjective system, and if people want to start using the automated AI ones, then they can go for it. But until they sort of get all the different, things in place to address all the issues that other people, the humans seem to be able to pick up a bit better, then they'll probably take a bit more time.
All right. There's one at the top there from Kevin. He's jumping in the comments quite a bit. I'm assuming this is what he means. He's written, if we have a Panini or a Leighton sealed one touch.
Yep.
So I don't think Leighton's just Leighton, mate. That's just a company. That's not nothing to do with Panini. Can we request the minimum of a PSA 10 or leave it in the one touch? So I guess that's the same here with this Steph Curry Flawless.
Yep, so that's a good example.
I know the answer to this one, but over to you.
Yeah, they used to do it. So not Leighton or anything. Those guys, that's just a breaker sealing a one touch. That's not the same as it coming direct from manufacturer. So you used to be able to send in a manufacturer sealed. So it was Tops as well would do it. send them in the one touches, and they would grade them basically minimum grade. And if they didn't get minimum grade, they wouldn't remove it from the one touch. But they removed the minimum grade allowance for raw cards back when COVID hit, because it was just another thing slowing down their entire process that was causing them to not be able to get through the millions and millions of cards they had. So that got scrapped, and they haven't brought it back, and there's been no indication they will. Also, they really don't like cards being sent in one touches, neither do I, because one touches, even that one you've probably got there, if you give it a little jiggle, the card moves around inside it. Some of them are pretty good.
But that's why I actually have I get asked quite a lot, mate. I refuse to send any cards out in one touches for that reason. Is that one touch for me is the display piece. That if you want to stick that on your wall and have that in display, I don't want to send stuff because, like you said, they do move around ever so slightly. Stuff I've had sent to me gets these tiny little surface scratches and that from moving around in the one touch. That's why I'm not a fan of them at all. Yeah,
that's my concern with them, is that they're designed to have a little bit of movement so as you don't pinch the cards in them. Conversely, I've seen people actually, and that's my other problem with it, I've seen people pinch cards in one touches. When I say pinch, basically where those little recesses are in the corners, if the card's not perfectly sat in there, it slides slightly across onto the edge, and then when you close the one touch, it actually pinches the corner of the card and causes a crease in the back of the card, which basically immediately you're talking a PSA 7.
Yeah, so this one got sent to me from PSA, not from PSA, from Panini with the Panini seal and the one touch, and because it's such a skinny card, it jumped out, and it was actually in the corner. I was horrified. I ripped it straight out and put it in a sleeve.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, particularly the die cuts. Die cuts shouldn't go into one touches, if you ask me. It's just because of like you said, they're not a full size card. So anyway, just where's the hobby located? We're down in Melbourne, western suburbs of Melbourne.
Stavros got another one there about November cutoff, mate.
November cutoff. Easiest way, if you ever need to know, is jump on our website. You can just click on the link to grading and then how to submit your cards with any of the companies, and then we have the submission due dates listed there. So November due date for us is 17th of November to us, so it's a Friday. If it happens to arrive in Monday morning, don't stress, we'll still pick it up and it'll still sneak in. But generally it's around at the moment 17th of November, then the last one for the year is 15th of December. And yes, you can swing by and drop them off. Jump on the website, thehobby.com.au/book, and just book a grading drop-off slot just to make sure we've got enough people here at the time to help you out.
Right.
It's a free drop-off. It's just, we just want that 5-10 minute that window blocked out.
I had to go back up. John Carter, listen, guys, I'm not missing your questions on purpose. The comments are going through this. John Carter had a serious one. He thinks he's dropped so much dribble in the comments, you can't tell his serious ones. Do you think Fanatics will look to acquire a grading company? And if they do, which one?
So they already have. So they already own, I think it's CSG from memory. I'm pretty sure. I'm just doing a bit of Googling. So I think Fanatics, what was it? I think they bought a large share in CSG, Certified Sports Guarantee. Just checking if Google brings up anything. But so they've already entered that space from memory. They already have some association with it. So CSG hasn't got a huge, following here in Australia, but it does a lot globally particularly for TCG. But for sports, it's less, less desirable. But look to see Fanatics push that forward if they do. So
Right, I think I got another one there. Zach Thornton, do you recommend trying to clean yourself or allow a professional to do it? So before we get to that one though, Laine, the next question I had for you is just, and I'm conscious of your time too. So you tell me when you want to wrap this up too, because you're a hard man to get a hold of. What are your, just say if we're just looking at this, I think this one's probably an easy one because I don't care if we ever play around with it. So look at this Pokemon card. It's got a border. So that what would you be looking for on this Pokemon card as far as determining? Let's forget this is probably just $1 card. Let's pretend this is a $100 card. So it's got some value. A PSA 10 is going to increase its value to say 500. What are you looking at first? What's your big hitter?
Yeah. So for Pokemon, for me, there's the two first things I look for, and if I don't like this bit, I put the card away straight. I don't bother going any further. First one is centering. So that border needs to be
silver border either side. Yep.
With Pokemon in particular, it's very obvious when they're not centered. Like most people with, half decent eyeballs can pick that it's, if it's slightly left or right, up or down, or both. Sometimes they're both, and that looks hideous when it comes to centering. Because the big thing with PSA is eye appeal. So if you look at something like that and it doesn't look good, that will mean you won't get a 10. It doesn't matter if you think it's within the tolerance of the grading, 60-40 on the centering and all that. If it actually looks bad, but it's within 60-40, they will still not give it a 10. Yep. So for me, straight away on those, I'll look at the front centering and then I'll flip it over. And if there's any white on the back corners or edges, that's a big giveaway too, because the blue border on those cards, it's like having like Noir. The back of Noir cards is usually horrendous, even the front of them, just because it shows up everything. So the dark blue really highlights any white, edges, corners, chips, any of that sort of stuff. So particularly with Pokemon, that's my first go-to move, is just to do that. If that passes, then I'll move on to the next bit, which is I'll inspect the surface properly.
Yep.
Do that.
What's your process there, mate? What are we looking for on that surfaces? So I've obviously got this card. I've got my dirty fingerprints all over this card now. What are you going to look for? Obviously, fingerprint will be one of them.
Yeah, fingerprints is obviously an easy one that you can get rid of. But, for example, stuff like prism cards and things like that, you can basically check and you can find a whole bunch of things wrong with them by putting it under a direct light. So what I mean by direct light is if I actually switch my camera, I can probably show you a little bit. I'll see if it works. Let's see how we go here. There you go. It's shone up now. So this is kind of like my little setup I have sitting next to me here at the table. But what I meant by direct light is I've got a lamp. So that's just a lamp. It's not an LED lamp. It's just got the plain globe on it. And when I do all my checks for cards, I'm getting that light. See how that light is like shining right on the surface? Yep. I use that because when I do that, you can actually pick up all the surface defects in the card, particularly in prisms. You'll see where it's not a continuous surface. You'll see when something's wrong with it. And this card, for example, you might actually be able to pick it up. See there? If your resolution's high enough, you'll see there's actually a massive crease in it. So
is that running all the way up to the top corner there?
Yeah, it's like this huge crease that runs down
I can
there.
just make that out. Yep.
Yeah, and on the back you can see it through. So this card's actually sitting on my desk because it's damaged. It's actually got a crease that runs all the way down there, the whole thing. Pulled this out of a box myself, rookie numbered to 20, and it's essentially creased from top to bottom. So stuff like that, when you're looking at a surface, it's always get it in that light and get that light across it, work your way around it, front and back, and pick up those surface defects. You'd be amazed at what you can pick up by doing that.
Yep, so that'll be like little micro scratches or excess wax or little dimples or those sorts of things are the things you're looking for.
Anything like that, anything that makes the surface not just one continuous surface. And if that includes little scratches, you'll be amazed at tiny scratches and things like that. There's always something. This card here is an example of another one. It's a Robert Lewandowski card from this year's Chronicles, numbered to 23. I was sitting here. I went over the front surface. I'm like, this thing's bang on. One of the corners, it might be a little bit off. And I turned it over and I was looking around, and eventually you won't see it very well necessarily, but this top corner here is actually completely peeling off.
Lovely.
And it's very easy if you're not looking and inspecting in detail to miss things. Like this one's obvious, but sometimes you can miss that there's a corner that's maybe a little bit soft, so it's always just I tend to go through a process of start on the back with a sports card, see if there's any dents on the surface, check the edges, check the corners, have a little bit of a look at the centering, because back centering is less important with both companies, PSA and BGS. Then I'll move to the front and check over the front as well. And if the front's got scratches, dimples, all that sort of things. Big one is too, PSA absolutely hates dimples on cards. BGS does knock you down a bit, but if there's a dent in the back of a card, you're immediately getting a PSA 7 at best.
No dents. Okay.
Yep. They're big on that.
Righto. I see some wipes and stuff there, mate. Is that part of your process too there for getting rid of fingerprints and that?
Yeah, so I'll normally, for example, say I've got a card like this Paolo, it's another one that's got some damage on it, but just say I was cleaning it, I've got these wipes, they're actually chamois, little mini chamois. They're for sunglasses that I use. I always use them, and they're really good at getting fingerprints off. Always wipe away from the middle to the edge, all that sort of thing. That way you avoid sort of clipping a corner and things like that.
Yep.
If needs be, I use a bit of what this is actually just lens cleaner for glasses. So it's got no alcohol in it. I highly recommend using the ones that don't have alcohol, just because the alcohol, the way it reacts and essentially evaporates, never sure exactly what that's going to do long term to the surface of a card. So I always use non-alcohol based ones. But that can be used to get fingerprints off, a little bit of grime, smoke or muck that might be on your card, wax that's left over. Sometimes when these are printed, there's little bits of the sort of the almost like the prism plastic that gets stuck on the back that you have to sort of get off. So yeah, I'll use that. I'll use a tiny bit on this, wipe it on, use the chamois to wipe it off. And that's basically that sort of thing. I've also got this lovely looking magnifying glass. That's really good for like looking at getting up close to the corners and getting a good view without doing your, staring at it too closely and ruining your eyesight. So yeah, that gets reasonably good magnification up to about, depending on how you set it up, it gets up to about 10 times magnification on the corner. So you can pretty much pick up most things the grader's going to be looking at too. So yeah, that's the general stuff I've got. And then I've just got things like this, just when I'm finishing up the card before I put it in the sleeve. This is used for camera lenses, basically a little blower with a soft end on it. So if there's any dust on your card, you can actually wipe it off. Yeah, they're the main things we use. And then I just usually put it straight into a sleeve top loader and get ready to send it off for grading. So it's not really rocket science when you're looking at a card for grading. It's just experience, understanding what works, what doesn't work, what PSA and BGS are looking for versus what the other companies are looking for and what you're expecting from it.
Yep. So just with that, I'm not putting you on the spot. Where there's a site, I think I actually sent you a message about it before, and you were very firm and very clear in your answer, which is Kurt's Card Care would be counted as like alterations to a card, and therefore you get blacklisted for court doing it. Where do you believe the line is? So obviously a fingerprint or a bit of goo or something on the surface of a card that you've got no qualms at all there about using a little bit of lens cleaner there just to remove, that stuff that's maybe come from the outside environment. Where's the line, mate? And where's going too far? What do you think when it comes to getting stuff cleaned up?
Based on my actual discussions with PSA and this is once at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff is personal opinion and there's a lot of conjecture around it. But yeah, cleaning stuff off the surface that's marks, blemishes that are just on the sub, they're basically cosmetic. They're just on top of the surface. They're not underneath or anything. When there's scratches in the prism, basically if you're applying a substance to the card, whether that be wax, polish, and that sort of thing to try and add to the card. So like when I'm using this lens cleaner stuff, it's basically you put it on and you wipe it off to get the muck off. So fingerprints, smudges, things like that. It's not actually like a wax or a polish that stays on there afterwards.
Okay.
So when you're leaving stuff on the card afterwards, the grading companies consider that alteration. So a lot of what he does isn't alteration. It's just cleaning cards. It's just taking away things like, stains that might be on old cards, cleaning off marks. When he starts polishing it, that's when it could be getting into that realm of grading companies saying it's considered alteration. Ultimately, it comes down to them because they're the ones who are grading it. I can't tell someone not to do something because ultimately, if the grading companies are going to grade it, then they're going to grade it. The obvious big ones are things like trimming in that, which is a big no-no. The only time people seem to be able to think they can justify it is if the card's oversized. So in other words, it's bigger than manufactured.
Too big for out of the sheet from the get-go.
Yeah, but that modern cards, that rarely happens. They're more talking about, this is where the people get a bit, have a bit of fun when it comes to vintage cards and talking about sizing and why trimming a oversized vintage card isn't a problem. And there's a lot of people who have arguments about that. I don't delve in that world. So, I'm not really going to try and say I've got any expertise to comment on it. But yeah, like things like, the other thing in between those two that I sort of think is a very grey area is, if you've got a corner that's like rolled, like folded over, I don't see any issue with folding it back over and flattening it out. like it's just a piece of paper, right? You're just putting it back in place. It's not like you're trying to do anything. It's when people start doing things. I think there's people out there who can like rebuild corners on cards and things like that. That's getting a bit too beyond my expertise. But yeah, there's things like that. And the other one that I really don't know if I've got an opinion on is he uses a humidifier to help get dimples out of cards.
Yep.
It's really hard to argue for and against that one, because if you live in a humid environment, like let's say you live in Florida or I don't know, even Southeast Asia or even Northern Australia, having your cards out on your bench during the day could expose them to the amount of humidity that you would experience in those humidifiers that would possibly lead to a similar sort of, result. So it's really hard, to say anything with those, because ultimately it could just happen naturally. They're the kind of areas I sort of see. Three kind of areas, benign stuff that's fine, a grey area somewhere in the middle, which it's hard to say, and then there's the stuff that I think most people would agree is probably alteration, but not everybody does. I guess it's everybody's got their own opinion, and that's fine.
All right, excellent. Kevin Cho, best address to send to, mate. You jump on his website, The Hobby. We'll post a link.
All the details are there.
Yeah, we'll post a link there. Glenn Bain hit me up for surface cleaning. We've just covered that, Glenn. He's got a lens cleaner stuff there you can use. You can go back there and watch that. Chad, we're not rebuilding your life or your wife. Are you drinking on what day is it? Monday. It's a school night, Chad. Get off the beers. Anyone got any small serious questions for Laine? I'm out of questions, and I'm conscious of the fact we've already taken up sort of 36 minutes of his time.
Yeah, that's all good.
Glenn has a serious one, maybe. When it comes to Court Kings cards that have a rough surface, what would you suggest for cleaning the surface of them without damaging? Still using the same stuff there, Laine?
Yeah, look, that's a good question, because you don't. So something like this, I wouldn't use it on everything, right? There's plenty of cards out there that it's not a good idea. So if you think of the surface, like Prism, it's got that kind of plastic coating on it, right? That's I wouldn't say waterproof, but it's less susceptible to damage from liquids. Court Kings, on the other hand, I don't touch it with anything but one of these. I wouldn't put liquid on a Court Kings card because it will absorb the liquid. Your card will start to expand, and then you've got to start worrying about what to do next, because they don't like liquid. Even some immaculate cards and things like that don't have the acetate surfaces are the same. They don't like liquid coming near them. They absorb it quickly. The surface starts to actually disappear from the card. So you've just got to be careful with certain cards. And yeah, it just takes experience to sort of, and even just a bit of common sense sometimes, just thinking about it, going, all right, well, you reckon if I put liquid on this, it's going to cause problems? Yep, probably don't do that then. Just use a plain wipe and go carefully so you don't rub the surface off.
Zach Thornton, Laine got pretty in depth there at the start of the video, mate. So I'll post a link to YouTube. He got pretty in depth there on whether he's going to send to PSA. PSA is generally his go-to unless he thinks it's real super hot, where he's going to get a BGS 10, then he'll go to BGS. Anyone else want to jump in there?
Broke my own rule with this one. I don't know if it's.
Sorry, mate.
Broke my own rule with this one. It's a big thick boy. Curry. Gold patch auto. I thought, yeah, let's go. We're going to go right at PSA. But yeah, it's a good example of why something like that is probably better for BGS, just because it's thick. These Spectra cards susceptible to damage. As soon as you look at the back, there's a few soft corners. PSA just knock that back real quick. So you've got to basically take things like that into mind. Like that might come, if I send it to PSA or BGS, it might come back an 8-10. I don't know. I'm just don't have the guts to crack it and send it.
Do it now. Do it live on the spot.
Nah. I'll crack plenty of slabs, don't worry, but I can't do that. It's just too stressful.
No, understood, mate. So generally speaking, the thicker card, there's a general rule that you'll send to BGS. Tom Davidson says, what do PSA use to calculate card value after grading if requesting an additional fee? Yep.
Variety of factors. They have their own database. So for high pop cards that are, transacted frequently. So, if you're talking PSA 10 Prism Silvers, they have all the data on that. They know what they're worth. Conversely, if there's, we had an argument with them for a while over a very unique card. There was only one of them anywhere. in the world, and they upcharge us on it. We're like, how do you justify that? So we went through some detailed discussions with them on that, and they used some examples of. So it was an all-time great from a sport, and rookie card signed because when he was playing, or when he first started, they didn't have signed cards, so it was signed in person. And they didn't have anything to compare it to, so they went and looked at the rookie card of Michael Jordan versus a signed Jordan rookie card, so using similar grades. So they have a variety of ways they can do it. They can say a raw Jordan rookie was of this grade was 10K, and the signed one of that was 5 times as much as that. So therefore, we're going to apply the same value to this card because a raw one of these is sold. Therefore, a signed one is now worth 5 times as much. They can do things like that. So there's always ways to do it, but they're pretty good. They've had a few times where they've maybe overcooked it or got something wrong, and we've just said to them, "Hey guys, we think that's wrong. Here's some evidence," and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool. We didn't see that sale. We'll adjust it back for you." Yeah, we never really had a problem. They've always been pretty good, explained everything, and just.
But it's generally speaking, if you put it in the say less than $100 category and it's a $5,000 card, then they're gonna say, "Hang on a minute."
Yeah.
Hang on a minute.
Yeah, that's the thing. For them, that's the reason why. And there's a lot of people say, why do they have that business model? And at the end of the day, that's their business model. It's been that way for forever. We aren't one to judge how they choose to do their business, but we all do.
If you don't like it, go somewhere else. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, look, it is, and they will say things along the lines of it's to do with their insurance, their grading guarantee, and all that sort of thing. But even if it isn't, that's just their way they operate. It's actually really the value part. Is 2 parts to every grading category. It's value and turnaround time. So you can submit a $10 card in an under $10,000 category if you want it back tomorrow.
Yep.
That's just how it works. It's the same. BGS do the same thing. They just don't put a value on it. They just say if you want it.
Best surface works. Yep.
Yeah. So it's kind of people focus a lot on the value. It's not always just about the value. It's also about how quickly you can get it back. So
yeah. Right, so Benny's got one there. I have a card that doesn't have the player's name on it.
Yep.
Will this grade or will the error determine it to be ungradable? So we had the famous, that's happened quite a few times, but Kendrick Nunn.
Yeah, there's the Kendrick Nunn, and there was who was the other one that year? Same year. I can't remember who it was. Was it Denny Avija? I'm not sure. Anyway, there's 2 guys in that set that didn't have it. Cards like that, they're not considered error cards because they're all manufactured the same. Yep. So it's not actually an error card. But depending on the set and what it is they will sometimes list them as error cards. There are some of the old baseball cards. So there's the Frank Thomas no name that gets graded. That's actually worth more than the named one from the late 80s, early 90s set, I think it was. So yeah, there's a few of them depending on what it is.
I think Rodney Hood in 2021 had the border error. So are you talking about all the cards like that, Benny, or is it just your one particular card doesn't have a name on it? And then, Laine, the question to you, I suppose, if it is an actual error card, so it's just the only one in the world that does not have a name on it, would that affect the grade, or would they still just be looking at the card as the card surfaces, borders, corners?
It really depends, honestly. We haven't had a card of that nature come through here that we've been able to test to sort of say. Yep. We can always check with PSA beforehand and submit a request, and they generally get back to us within a few days with their, what the grade is, or they go and have someone that will answer it for us. So yeah, look, honestly, I can't answer that one, unfortunately. It's only the ones that I know of are the bigger error cards that are, I wouldn't say mass-produced error cards, but there's more of the error cards, and PSA have decided that they will grade them as error cards.
There you go, Benny. I think that you covered there. Kevin Cho, is there still under a 100 category or only under 500 now?
We've got under 200, but it's for TCG only. So your Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, One Piece, Magic, all that stuff. So we've got under 200 for that. But that's max, so max value 200, $30, about 3 to 4 months turnaround. But for everything else, it's under 500. They've given up on the under 100 because basically they got to the point where the card market inflated so much that if any card got a 10, it was going to be worth more than $100. It's come back down now, obviously. There's plenty of cards that are PSA 10s that aren't worth $100. But they had a period there where they had to, actually do something with that and decided to scrap it just completely.
Right. Wally's got one there. Best way to store cards, mate, is it just a sleeve and a top loader? What do you do? Just sleeve and top load everything?
Yeah, look, if I'm doing for grading or I'm considering it for grading, it's always in a sleeve and top loader and it's heading off to grading. I've got so many graded cards. It's not funny. Obviously running a business means you end up with thousands of them. But everything else that we have is all generally in a sleeve and top loader. Some stuff stays in one touches, obviously, if it's manufacturer sealed. If it's a couple of cards, we might decide, yep, cool, we want to leave them in a one touch for whatever reason. But generally, I'm a top loader thing, but that's me. Some of my personal collection, though, are in one touches because it just makes sense and looks better.
Oh, it looks, look, a one touch looks beautiful. It's just like
there's certain cards that they're not. I'm not going to grade them. They're thicker cards. I'll leave them in a one touch.
Yep, and it does look nice if that's going on display. Just like I said before, guys, I'm not going to send you a card like that. I'll send you a one touch if you want one. Just ask me for one. Right, guys. Any other questions? Last couple of minutes here before we let Laine go. Laine, I really do appreciate you coming on and giving us some of your wisdom here. We'll post the link to Laine's Facebook page and his website in the comments, so you can submit some cards if you're interested. And Laine's generally pretty good too. Jump on the page. Look, one big tip, guys. Laine's page has already got a lot of the information that you need on the page. If you go through the comments and have a look, your question's probably already been asked 5,000 times. So don't direct message him about something you'll probably find on it's too hard. I don't mind responding, and I'm sure Laine doesn't mind responding to people either. But I'll
just direct them to the website 90% of the time because it saves us both time. I could drop a giant spiel into the chat, but then if I change that spiel in 2 months because grading something changes, then people refer back to the chat and it's wrong. So it's always best just to go to the website, literally thehobby.com.au/grading. That's all you need to know. You click on which company you want to use, and all the info is all there, ready to go. And we try and keep it as straightforward as we can.
Yeah, no worries. Just one quick one there. Justin Hogg, I think, again, I know the answer to this one. Turnaround times with PSA. How's it been, Laine, with the...
Yeah, they're actually pretty good at the moment. So even our cheapest category, the under 200 TCG is about 3 to 4 months. Under 500 categories, 2 to 3 months, and everything else is, under 1,500 is the next one. So it goes from 500 to 1,500. It is quite a jump, but that goes about a month return time roughly. Can get up to about 6 weeks, but it's generally pretty quick for those. So turnarounds at the moment are pretty good.
Nice flex there too with that Mahomes. Thanks.
Well, I just wanted to. I was going to use it as an example actually, because we didn't talk about autographs.
Go for it.
Yeah, one thing people often forget about when they're grading stuff is they can also get the autograph graded. You don't have to, so you can get autograph cards graded without the auto grade. So you can see this one's got the card grade auto grade. So on a card like this,
9 and 10, it's 9 and 10. Yep,
it increases value. So if it was just a 9, it'd be still all right. But a 9 with an auto 10 is actually worth more than just a 9. So you do pay 20% extra to grade the autograph now. It used to be the same price. Now they've increased it the last few years to 20% more. Things to look at, though, particularly with sticker autos, you should be able to see this one. It's a bit hard without the light there, but that sticker, that's all on the sticker. Doesn't leave the sticker at all. Might look like it, but there's like a tiny bit at the top there where all it has to be is just the tiniest bit of gap between the edge of the pen and the sticker, and it's all good. And it just has to be continuous without too many streaks or anything in it.
Yep.
So that's what a 10 looks like. Here's an example of, this is a 9, the auto. It's marginal. It's close to 10. But the main reason is that there's some spotting on the ink in the middle, and that's a little bit streaky in one section. I'm just trying to remember where. I think it's around the P here on the side. So PSA can be a little bit finicky about it. It's also, does that look like his normal auto? That's just something else they'll look at. But basically, there's things like that. And then when you stick a card, I've got another one where it goes off the auto, off the sticker quickly. So this is a Ronaldo World Cup auto. Basically, the only thing stops this from getting a 10 is the top of his loop here on his top of his big C that he does and his top of his R or whatever it is, just touches the edge of the sticker. That was enough to give that a 9. That's all it takes. So BGS are just the same as PSA. They will give you a 9 just for something like that. So just something to keep in mind.
I had a Source Gardener. You can see not that one. That's an on card there, but Source because that's a big tail. He ran his tail off the end of the sticker. But I'm like, oh come on, man! It's like 2 inches away from where his auto should finish.
Yep.
But yeah, that ended up copping a 9 because of that.
There's a few guys who are notorious for it. I'm not going to lie. On the other hand, Anthony Edwards likes to sign on the edge of the card.
Oh yeah, he's far. He must be a cack-hander, I reckon. Left-handed. He's always hard left.
Yeah, I think he runs through them real quick. So
yeah.
But anyway, there's always one or two that do that sort of stuff.
Justin submitted cards back in August, still waiting. Is it with Laine, mate? You're probably better off reaching out there to the guys on the website there if it's with Laine's company. I think unless Laine, you've got anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it, mate. We've covered most things. Like I said, though, if people have questions, jump on the website, have a look, and if not, flick us an email. And if you really want, flick me a message. My inboxes get pretty destroyed, so email is always better because then we've got a team of guys to, actually get onto it and get you a response. But if it's in my messages, I'll hopefully get to it eventually. It might take me a day or two, though.
Yep. All right, mate. Unreal. Look, again, I really appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge here with the members. Guys that are thinking about doing it and have been too worried about it. Hopefully, they sort of give you a bit of confidence there to just wipe your cards down and get them off the Laine, and he can do the hard work for you. John Williams does the WW belt fit your Laine?
Mate, if I strap it up, it can a bit. Yeah, I haven't walked around with it on yet. Maybe I should put it over the shoulder once.
Yeah. All right. All right, mate. Thank you very much. All the details will come in the comments, guys. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, bud. See ya.
Bye.